Hi there. In this presentation, I will be analyzing the historical and social implications of biases against East Asians and their cuisine, and how these biases lead to increased discrimination and hate crimes against Asian Americans, using COVID as a case study. East Asian food can be characterized by its sour and vinegary flavors that come with the fermentation process. While fermented foods may seem foreign to Americans, these foods are integral to Asian culture and cuisine. The practice of fermenting food has been used for centuries and has many benefits, such as better gut health and preservation of foods so it stays good for longer. In the video from Fresh Off the Boat, we can see a trope that happens far too often for many Asian American children in the real world. Although in this video, the actions of the white kids ridiculing the Asian American child for his ethnic dish seem less harmful since they are children, there are many real world implications and consequences when behavior like this goes unchecked. This kind of rhetoric not only leads to more violence against Asian Americans, but comes from a long history of racism towards Asians due to them being stereotyped as quote unquote dirty. When analyzing the biases against Eastern Asian cuisine, it is important to consider the history of these prejudices and where they come from. In 1882, the Chinese Exclusion Act was passed, which barred any Chinese immigrant from re entering the U.S. after leaving. This was the first time in U.S. history that an entire ethnicity was not allowed to enter the U.S. on the premise that it endangered the good order of certain localities. Then, in 1924, the act was expanded to include all Asians. As you can see in the image to the right, this propaganda depicts imperialist America literally kicking the Chinese people out of the US. In his hand, the bucket reads magic washer and the scroll saying they are guilty of being dirty. This shows just how systematic this racism and stigmatization towards Asian Americans have been throughout history. Although we are no longer barring Asians from entering the U.S., Asian Americans still face hate and discrimination every day due to how deeply embedded racism is in American society. While these prejudices may manifest in biases against Asian American food, they stem from a much larger issue at hand. In 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic's epicenter was found to be the large wet market in Wuhan, China, which sold meat and seafood. Shortly after it came out that the virus originated from China, the rumors and racist rhetoric became very apparent. While the virus can spread from bats to livestock, the Western media heard bats and ran with it. While there are no documented cases of bats being sold or consumed in Wuhan, the West used the little information they knew to spread racism and misinformation. On top of the media spreading false narratives, the Trump administration also infamously contributed to the Chinese hate campaign during COVID, calling the virus Wuhan virus and creating conspiracies around the pandemic's true origin. Instead of coming up with a plan to combat the spread of COVID and unite the American people during trying times, the Trump administration redirected much of its energy towards blaming China, which in turn isolated an entire ethnic group in the country. By making an entire ethnicity the scapegoat for a global pandemic, this gave our racist society someone to blame by solidifying their current prejudices. According to the American Experiences with Discrimination Survey, hate crimes against American Asians Pacific Islanders rose by over 3%. A hate crime can be defined as a criminal offense against a person or property motivated in whole or in part by an offender's bias against race, religion, disability, sexual orientation, ethnicity, gender, or gender identity. In addition to this, according to the Asian American Foundation, many of these instances of hate towards Asian Americans goes unreported. As you can see in this video, the man was told to move and sprayed with some kind of cleaner solely based on the fact that he was Asian. Instances similar to this became very common during COVID and highlights how the spread of misinformation plays a role in these cases. Earlier, I described how Asians were being used as a scapegoat for COVID. The scapegoat theory does perfectly characterize how society justified its racism through shifting blame. The American Psychology Association describes the scapegoat theory as in groups unfairly blaming outgroups for their own misfortunes, frustrations, or social and economic problems, reducing their own cognitive dissonance and avoiding accountability. Since the West already had perceptions that Asian markets and cuisines are quote unquote exotic and unsanitary, it was easy to justify blaming an entire global pandemic on the Chinese and their culture. The prejudice towards Asian Americans unfortunately does not stop at the violence inflicted upon these groups, but the Asian American restaurant industry was also greatly impacted by the pandemic. It was found that post COVID, Asian restaurants experienced nearly 20% less foot traffic compared to other cuisines. This resulted in over $7 billion being lost in revenue to this industry. As inflation caused many businesses to need to increase their prices, this caused many Asian restaurants to not be able to compete. The societal perceptions of this food being unsanitary, mixed with the expectation that this food is cheap, made it very difficult for these small Asian businesses to survive post COVID. It was also found that the highest drop in foot traffic was found in zip codes where Trump was elected. This displays how politicized our culture and food has become, that people's prejudice towards an ethnicity can affect their eating habits. With these stigmatizations so normalized and enabled by our society, saying they need to be unlearned is easier said than done. These stigmas often lead to Asian hate crimes going unreported due to not being comfortable reporting or not knowing they could. At their least harmful, these biases may look like what we see in the fresh off the boat scene of Asian cuisine being the butt of a joke. But at its worst, these stigmas can look like violent acts committed against Asian American Pacific Island communities. One way we can unlearn these biases is by learning more about Asian cuisine and culture through empowering Asian voices and communities. Organizations like AAP, Stop AAP I Hate, work to combat Asian hate through making these voices heard by providing resources and community engagement. We also need to use critical thinking when the media tries to spread misinformation based on racism and prejudice. By empowering Asian voices and being more critical of the media we consume, we as a society can start to destigmatize our perceptions towards Asians and their cuisine.